from my perspective and where I was standing, the offender was very alert, very intent on causing serious harm. I was very, very concerned for my safety. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know what the result was going to be, but I'm happy that I was able to defend myself in that moment by delivering several closed fist strikes to the offender's face and his body, and there was a lot of blood everywhere. It looked a little bit like a horror movie. Luckily, I was able to neutralise the threat.
Avi Meni for Rebel News outside the Melbourne court to catch up with a good friend, the president of the Freedom Party, Morgan Jonas, who has a shocking ordeal to share with you and in fact is leading him onto a new campaign to legalise pepper spray.
So February this year, I was walking down the street carrying my shopping, just a normal day. I hear somebody come behind me and yelled something to the effect of, you might want to bleep this out, "Where the f*** are you going, cunt?" So I turn around, I say, "Excuse me, what's going on?" He's like, "You heard me, I'm going to smash your f***ing head in," right? I'm walking down the street, I'm with a female friend of mine, I've got my shopping in my hand, I've put my shopping down, I've put my hands up very defensively, and I've said, "Listen, you don't want to do this." I said, "This is not a good idea." The offender continues to approach me in a fighting stance, continues to threaten me. So I walk backwards like this for about 120 seconds until there's no other choice. The offender's not going away. And at that stage, I take action. I defend myself by delivering several closed fist strikes to the offender's face and his body, and I was able to neutralise the threat.
We've managed to get a hold of some of the CCTV. We can see you walking back. The confrontation happens out of the camera's sight, but we see him stumbling back in, bleeding, but you can also see he's recently obviously had some sort of surgery because he's got his shirt off and you can see the bandages or whatever on him. What was going through your mind when you finally did fight back? And do you think the fact that he had been through something recently helped you in being able to fight him? As in, was he a little bit subdued or was he a little bit injured so you were able to fight back effectively?
Well, after the fact, Avi, I was advised by police that the offender had recently gotten out of hospital after getting treated for a stab wound. So I didn't know that at the time. So during the altercation, I've hit him, opened up the stitches. So there was a lot of blood everywhere. It looked a little bit like a horror movie. But no, from my perspective and where I was standing, the offender was very alert, very intent on causing serious harm. I was very, very concerned for my safety. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if the offender had a knife. At one stage, he had something in his hand. I didn't know what the result was going to be, but I'm happy that I was able to defend myself in that moment. As a result of this crime, it did leave me with a very badly injured hand that has only just fully recovered, but even it still gives me a few little issues, but I couldn't work properly for a couple of months, so luckily I was able to neutralise the threat.
And what's happened since then?
Well, since then I've been liaising with police. So police correctly identified at the day that my conduct was perfectly lawful and in line with the Crimes Act in terms of how self-defence is defined. The offender was charged with a summary offence called unlawful assault, which is basically the lowest level of assault.
So obviously you've been through the court today.
Yep.
What was the outcome?
So the outcome is a diversion. So it's not clear to me exactly if there'll be any type of sentencing for the offender. I don't expect there'll be a conviction. It was suggested to me by the court the offender may be asked to make a donation or to maybe write a letter or maybe nothing at all. So a little bit underwhelming if I'm being honest, because this is a violent person that I believe has the capacity to put the community at risk, and it seems that he hasn't even received a slap on the wrist. Just, oh well, go back out into the community and don't do it again. And I just think that's unacceptable and definitely not in line with community expectations in terms of how violent offenders should be dealt with by the law.
Yeah, well, I think most people watching this would think, well, imagine I was attacked, whether I can or can't defend myself, but especially if I can't defend myself and I end up suffering at the hands of this person or any person in Victoria, but then he goes to court and the court essentially gives him a free pass. That's pretty shocking.
Well, it is shocking, Avi, and I don't think that anybody should get a free pass for behaving violently in an unlawful manner towards another person. Okay, we're talking about people's lives, we're talking about people's dignity, and I think that these type of court outcomes most definitely sends the wrong message to would-be offenders out there, which is effectively something to the effect of, well, you can get away with assaulting somebody once but don't do it twice. I say that we need to have zero tolerance for violent offending, and violent offenders who commit these types of violent crimes, whether it's their first time, their second time, their third time, or whatever the case may be, there needs to be very serious punishment towards these people as a deterrent for both themselves and others doing it again in the future. And to simply let these guys off with not even a slap on the wrist, it's unacceptable. So the question is, what if the offender targeted a woman or somebody elderly or somebody who did not have the hand-to-hand skills to defend themselves? Somebody could have gotten very hurt that day, potentially killed. So after the offence took place, I was sitting on my couch and I was thinking, you know, it's really unfair that we've got these self-defence laws in this country which protect people for acting in self-defence, but the laws actually don't apply equally to everyone. So, you know, your capacity, my capacity is on a different level, say, to an elderly person or a woman, and that's not fair. So for that reason, Avi, I think that we need equality in the law in terms of the capacity that people have to defend themselves, and this is why I'm here today calling for the legalisation of pepper spray.
Is that something now that you're going to run with in your political party?
Well, I stand for self-defence. I believe that self-defence is a human right, and that right needs to be equally available to everyone, but it's not. So yeah, this is a platform that I am very, very happy to get behind.
How much of Australia or Victoria do you think is actually behind legalising something like pepper spray for defensive purposes?
Well, I think a lot of people, Avi. I think most reasonable people out there would agree that self-defence is a human right, and not all people are capable of defending themselves in the capacity of which they wish they could, should a violent situation occur. So I think this issue will be very popular.
What would you say to people who are fearful that this is one step to legalising firearms?
Well, pepper spray is really a defensive tool, and that's how it's historically been used. It can be used from a distance, unlike a taser or getting up close and personal with an offender who may have weapons on them. One can keep a safe distance, and that's the traditional use for this defensive tool. So I'd tell people, don't worry about it. It's much better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
I agree. In fact, I think that I've never seen anyone walk into a bank or commit violent offences with pepper spray. I can understand people's reservations about firearms, even though personally I believe in firearms, but I can understand people's reservations here, especially in Australia. Pepper spray, there really is no reason, which is why we're going to set up a petition, legalisepepperspray.com. We'll see how many people actually agree with you. And what would you say to people out there who do agree with you?
Well, there's millions of people around the world that carry pepper spray every day as a defensive tool. Many countries where it's legal and lawful to own pepper spray for that purpose, including in the state of Western Australia, and a lot of people don't know that. So I'll tell the general public, don't worry, it's okay. You're better to be safe than sorry. We have policing issues, we have sentencing issues where violent offenders are not even getting a slap on the wrist before they're released back into the public. So I'd say that unfortunately we're at a stage in our country, in our history, where regular people need to take self-defence into their own hands. And because we're not all equal and because not all people have the capability to defend themselves equally, there needs to be equalising tools at hand so that our self-defence laws as defined by the Crimes Act will be applied equally to everyone. So go ahead and sign the petition. That is legalisepepperspray.com, and let's take ownership of our own protection and our own personal safety.
Bro, good to hear you're all right. And at the end of the day, shocking ordeal, but at least out of it, I feel like you're going to campaign for something that I believe matters.
Yeah.
Legalising pepper spray. Guys, share this story far and wide. You won't hear it in the mainstream media. And then go and sign the petition, legalisepepperspray.com. Sign and share it. Because trust me, not all of us are as tough and as brave as Morgan here. Fight or flight kicks in, and you know, I've had my head kicked in a couple of times. I know how scary those moments are, and pepper spray is just such a useful tool that anybody can use and can be the difference between life or death.
Absolutely.
Legalisepepperspray.com. Sign and share.